one dirty word right now is the Cleveland Browns. Right now, it's been tough to talk Cleveland Browns. It hasn't stopped anybody on X from making comments, including myself. But, they're still the hot topic. They're still the team that everybody talks about in the city of Cleveland, Brownstown. And unfortunately, right now, I think a lot of us have hit rock bottom after this Sunday's loss at Washington, 34-13. More struggles across the board, from the quarterback position to the running game to not being able to hit receivers dropping balls in the end zone. Washington getting a running game going. Jaden Daniels looking not just like a good rookie quarterback, but damn near playing at an MVP level. How impressed are you, being an Eagles fan, with what the Redskins are doing? Or Redskins, here we go. We're not going to do Indians talk later, I promise. But how the Commanders are doing this season with Daniels as their quarterback.
So, James, if you remember, it was a late night. I want to say it was late August because I was working extremely late, working later than usual that I do on a Monday night. You guys were live doing your Browns prediction show. And again, working late, I was in the comment section there listening to your show. And I had commented that I thought the Commanders were going to be a better team than the Dallas Cowboys this year. And you, Clarence, and Kevin all basically said, you don't believe me. You thought I was trolling because I don't like the Cowboys because I'm an Eagles fan. And I said, no, I'm not trolling. I actually believe that because I believe that the Commanders were going to be a playoff team this year. I thought new ownership, new coach, new quarterback, essentially knew everything there in Washington besides the stadium. And they, wiped the slate clean. I am surprised by how fast it happened. And the most shocking result to me was actually this game Sunday, because I looked at Washington and I said, well, they beat the Giants. Their defense was not very good. They beat Cincinnati. We know their defense is not very good. And so I looked at the Browns defense and I thought Jim Schwartz's defense was going to be the first defense to give Jaden Daniels problems since the one he faced week 1 in Todd Bowles in Tampa. They run a very similar style. And yet the woes for the Browns on offense and defense just continue to happen. For whatever reason, the tackling to me on defense, I think, is something from a Browns perspective that no one is talking about. JOK missed a few key tackles early in the game, one on the first Brian Robinson touchdown, the other one on the fourth down. He's just running straight at Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels eludes him, ends up going down the sideline for 30 yards. So, like Washington, the fact that they won didn't necessarily surprise me. What surprised me was the fact the Browns did not show up. And you could just tell, in my opinion, the first drive of the game, Stefanski goes for it. They run that outside toss to, I think it was Deontay Foreman. It might have been Ford, but I thought it was Foreman. It was that 4th and 1 play where they got stuffed in the game. And from then on, you could just tell, like, the game was over. The Browns had no energy. Washington came out, punched them in the mouth, and that was that.
No, Brandon, you're exactly right, because I remember that play. Here's why. I remember the play before first, because the third down play was they had Jerome Ford in there, and he ran forward on that play, where I'm thinking, why is he in there for that, for a play between the tackles? And then for fourth down, you finally bring the bigger guy, the heavy hitter, and then you have him run outside on fourth down. To me, that's complete opposite of what your personnel is. Jerome Ford is the guy that you want that's going to stretch it, not Foreman. So that really disappointed me, just on the selection of personnel and who was in there at that time. It was just to me, it was a really bad decision on their part.
So I want to go back real quick and just talk about the Browns overview of what I thought about the Browns going into the year. There was a lot of excitement in Cleveland, obviously, around this team. I had a few colleagues of mine on my show over the summer. One of my colleagues told me that he legitimately thought, no cap, the Browns were the number 1 contender to Kansas City in the AFC. And I laughed at him. I told him there's no way. I thought this Browns team at best, I was giving them every 50-50 game. And I thought at Washington early in the year was a 50-50 game at the time when we all play schedule predictor. I gave the Browns 8 wins. And I said they were going to finish somewhere between third and fourth, probably fourth, because Pittsburgh's going to find a way to get 9 wins because they always do. But I didn't trust the Stefanski Watson relationship, and not even over what we've seen this year. It was more going back to the way the shoulder injury was handled last year. First, Watson said he was ready to go, then he didn't play, then he comes back, gets hurt against Indianapolis, then he comes back against Baltimore. You guys know the whole story. Did not like the way that was handled. Did not love the way the team just disregarded Flacco and didn't even try to sign him. I thought at least bring him back as a backup. I think we all know why that was the case. I think it has to do with the starting quarterback right now, myself, and them not wanting to hear the noise if what we thought was going to happen is happening. And I think the one thing that I am kind of shocked by is, listen, I know they don't have Nick Chubb. And I know Nick Chubb is a top 5 running back in the sport. But San Francisco doesn't have Christian McCaffrey. This Mason came in off the street. Nobody heard of him. He's getting 100 yards a game. We see teams around the league rotate these running backs and still get 100 yards. I mean, look at Kansas City last night. Kareem Hunt comes in 2 weeks off the couch, gets 100 yards and a touchdown.
Oh, no. We're talking couches now? We're talking about guys. Here we go. And in Cleveland, you know how we love to talk about our couches and Flacco's couch and Tim Couch. Oh my goodness!
But James,
but it was a great thing. It was a great thing. I was happy for Kareem.
This team, you look at the box score, and it's not like they're down early. I mean, obviously, it takes you 2 free possessions to get down 2 free possessions. They don't even try to run the ball. And I thought if you listen to the sound on Sunday, Greg Olsen, who's done a phenomenal job on Foxtrot his time there, really did a great job of breaking down the difference of scheme and what Stefanski wants to run and the 12 personnel and the under center and the play action pass versus what Deshaun Watson wants to run, which is drop back, shotgun, 11 personnel, how that changes the run game. And he basically was on TV and pretty much said, without saying it, this doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, that the possession of all possessions under Kevin Stefanski's stint as Cleveland Browns head coach was the turnover inside the 5 and the Browns unable to score other than having to go for a field goal because of the botched. I mean, that the timeout that was had to be. Well, first of all, we didn't score on the first play.
Yeah, but can I say something? Going back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand that obviously they called 2 timeouts on the goal line. That's bad. I'm not, defending anything of it. But I don't think, and I could be wrong on this, maybe I just read it wrong, they didn't have to kick the field goal. They called a timeout. They still could have went for it, even though they had 12 men on the field. They could have called a timeout, got back in the huddle, ran another play. It looks like everybody was just so rattled, they decided to take points because they already wasted 2 timeouts. What's a field goal going to do in that situation? You're not losing yards. It's still a 3-possession game. So I didn't even like them taking the field goal. I would have called another play and went for it. That's just me.
I mean, it was like Deshaun Watson had Hopkins in his fantasy league or something. Like, I couldn't believe when, he was walking off the field and just for Stefanski, that was actually blowing up. For as composed as he normally is, the disgust that we saw on his face of what's been going on with this team every week with penalties, and it's just.
And I'm just going to say this because I feel like you guys addressed it a little bit on your show last week, but nobody has really talked about it. The end of the Vegas game, when it's 4th down and the clock is running, and they still have all 3 timeouts. There's over a minute at this point. And the broadcaster is saying, what do they do? Why are they trying to get him to jump off sides 4 or 5 times? Now you have to call timeout and go for it because You don't have the opportunity now if you kick the field goal to get the ball back because you're under 40 seconds of time. That I think was such an underrated aspect of that game that again, like I think Kevin Stefanski's done a good job. I've written a lot about Stefanski for BelieveLand Media when I was writing articles for the site, but that bothered me, and I feel like it hasn't been talked about. I don't know if that was on Watson. I don't know if it was on Stefanski. That bothered me with the end of that game, the clock management against Vegas, because they either could have A, ran the field goal unit out there, kicked the field goal, still have all 3 timeouts, kick it deep and try to get a stop, or B, you could call a timeout and go for it, and you would still have 2 timeouts and still have a chance to get the ball back. They didn't have to waste all that clock.
They just look so out of sync. What was really telling, more so I think this week than any. And I know, Derek, you said the Browns look like toast. I happen to like toast, and right now I'd rather have toast over the Browns, even without butter if I had to. So yeah, the Browns are definitely lower on the tier than toast right now. I think Browns fans are toast. I think because we've just had enough from what we've saw week to week. I know that you want to talk about toast. The receivers, Brandon, you saw the body language out there. Jerry Jeudy dropping that ball in the end zone, but also some of these routes that are being ran, Watson just does not have the timing of anticipating throwing to a spot to when a guy's going to be there and be open.
Just before we came on here, it was the red zone series that we just talked about where they had to call, the 2 timeouts to kick the field goal. I was watching, I don't know if you're aware of Brian Baldner. He worked.
Yes, I did. And I just watched that myself. Yes.
He broke it down where, we're all blaming the offensive line, and the offensive line's been a turnstile. Nobody's denying that. But on this specific play, Watson has all the time in the world to throw. He has a clean pocket, clear sight lines. They're running a basic mesh concept, which you learn by playing Madden 98. You could go all the way back there.
Who was on the cover back then? I can't remember.
John Madden himself. So anyway, you have 2 mesh routes. It's man concept. You get the pick. The guy's wide open from the football. You're not looking at any other route on the field. The other 2 routes are dummy routes to draw the safeties away from your actual target. And I think it was Cooper who was wide.
It was, yeah.
In the end zone. Oh. And Watson's just staring at him.
No, actually, Cooper went inside and Jeudy went outside. Yeah, Jeudy was the one wide open.
So Jeudy was the one wide open.
Yeah.
Regardless. Why? I mean, there's nobody 5 yards. There's nobody 5 yards. And so, again, it's not.
The anticipation's not there. It's just he cannot throw to that spot. It's like has mental lock back there. And like you said, the offensive line gave him time. The offensive line has definitely had its struggles. There's no doubt there. However, Watson being in the pocket and not getting rid of the football has been the second part of that. So he's not doing anything to help his offensive line. And think about it, complementary football, right? The running game helps support the quarterback. The tight end's supposed to be your best friend, as your release valve. Sometimes your running backs out of the backfield checking off. But your receivers, the receivers have been open from time to time. And he is just not, I'm telling you right now, and I'm going to go back to it. I've heard one of our BelieveLand Media members kind of make comments to, hey, let's not talk about Flacco anymore. But it's hard not to. And it's so disappointing to know that we had a quarterback that could run an offense that already existed before these changes that came with bringing in Dorsey. We had it there, Brandon. We really did as Browns fans. We saw what a pro quarterback looked like, standing strong in the pocket and ripping back and making throws. Now, did he have his issues with interceptions? Yes, he did. And I think if you would bring, here's what happened to me Sunday. I was trying to play catch up on the game. I was recording it on YouTube TV, and I get to the point with where they were bringing Jameis in at garbage time. I was like, cool, I at least want to watch him play a series. I know it's garbage time. Of course, my TV starts buffering up. So I didn't get to see whatever he did on that drive or whatever. But long story short, Jameis's career has always had a ton of interceptions, but at least he can get points on the board. He can score touchdowns. And right now, we're just not scoring touchdowns, Brandon. We're miss Flacco. We miss Kareem Hunt, which I brought up last week, and his 10 touchdowns that we just haven't replaced. And Jerome Ford is just not that guy. And you brought up about, I know we don't have Nick Chubb. The team didn't have Nick Chubb at that point last year when we were making that strong run to qualify for the playoffs.
Oh, a little bit, and they're not able to. I think two things. One, as much as we think, and everybody is clamoring for Jameis Winston to start, and we know he's not going to start because Kevin Stefanski brushed it off immediately, which tells me it's not his decision, because if it was his decision, he wouldn't have answered it that quickly. I mean, it was immediate. He's not changing. The other thing, too, and I noticed this fresh off the gate in the Dallas game, immediately when I saw there was going to be issues this year, he looks – I've never seen a player, especially a quarterback, look slow when they're running the way he has from his days in college to, his Texans days when they would run a lot of the RPO and zone read concepts. He looks slow and unable to escape the pocket to me, which is an issue.
And, there's been comments, too, that we have some of the slowest wide receivers in the league, too. And I don't get into all that. Sometimes there's just too much analytics. I don't know who the hell's figuring all that out. But
the guy I can think of is Elijah Moore, and has he even touched the ball this year? I feel like he's barely been out there.
I know. You might as well. Yeah. I want to bring this point up too. If you think about what we have on offense, key guys, right? Key positions. Deshaun Watson, the Texans didn't want him. Amari Cooper. The Raiders didn't want him. The Cowboys didn't want him. Jerry Jeudy, the Broncos didn't want him. Elijah Moore, the Jets didn't want him. Our hometown, or I should say homegrown guys, Njoku plays well. Proud to have him on the team. Pro Bowl tight end. Getting Nick Chubb back, even if he's 92% of what Nick Chubb was, having him back, that's one of our key guys. But we have a lot of guys on this team that somehow our front office bringing them in. And Cooper has proven himself. 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving years. Fantastic. First Brown to ever do it. Ton of credit. Total pro. So I'm thankful to have Amari Cooper. But the other guys, it's just, why does our front office think that we need to bring in guys that aren't successful necessarily in other places, and then we're going to turn them around? Like, they're just going to magically start playing better because now they're in a Browns uniform. And like Jerry Jeudy, Brandon, I cannot believe that we gave him the contract extension that we did, unproven, when there was already heat from him coming from the Broncos, and he was never even their number one wide receiver, and barely maybe their number 2.
And, part of this, and again, I hate to bring it up, part of it's on the general manager, right? Andrew Berry. I mean, name one wide receiver he's drafted that stand out. I can't tell you.
Right.
As he had 2 or 3, I realize drafting's a crapshoot, and every GM and every team goes up and down the draft. Some years you have good years, some years you have bad years. And yes, the Browns are handcuffed because of this Watson trade, but that's where you look at teams like the Rams, Seattle at the start and the end of the Pete Carroll era. These teams made their living on getting production out of day 3, 4th for the 7th round, and undrafted guys. They really do make up 2/3 of your football team. And the Browns just are not getting any production and any depth, which is why you're seeing one offensive lineman goes down. The whole offensive line's in shambles. If, God forbid, if Amari Cooper goes down, who does this offense have to throw to outside of Njoku?
Right, and at this point, as good as Cooper is, and I know he's struggled with drops this year, and then the entire team, I think we still lead the league in drops. To me, it doesn't matter if he's out there or not anymore, because, I'd love to have him out there, obviously, but I want him playing at top level. But it seems like when your quarterback can't hit guys, what do we do? Here's the thing. I think it's no different than like with Aaron Rodgers when he was in Green Bay. He can help elevate and make receivers, right? Don't get me wrong. He doesn't have to teach them how to catch a football and how to get open, but he's such a good enough quarterback. He can hit them in the right spots to get so they can get a lot of yak and make those tough, tight throws in order for them to score maybe some deep corner end zone touchdowns over the shoulder. Watson's not going to do that.
Now, the NFL is not Major League Baseball. The NFL has a salary cap. It's not based on market size. Everybody pretty much has the same amount of money. My team, the Philadelphia Eagles, are paying their quarterback. They're paying Saquon Barkley a lot of money. They're paying 2 wide receivers. They're paying 3 or 4 of the offensive linemen big money. And again, they still have all this talent around the quarterback. Now, their defense maybe a little bit weaker than the Browns talent-wise, but the excuse of, we're paying Watson all this money, we don't have the money. They have the most or second most, something like that, salary cap space in the league if they put Watson's entire contract in a signing bonus, which makes him now virtually uncuttable.
Well, yeah. And I know you brought up the Eagles, and I think early and we'll bring winning football back to Cleveland. Yes, but here's the thing with Kevin. He came as an offensive mind, and Brandon, if you can remember, Clarence and I just talked about this, but when Brian Billick was with the Minnesota Vikings, he was part of a high-powered offensive coordinator, kind of like what Stefanski was in Minnesota, gets a head coaching job, or Billick gets the one in Baltimore. Now Stefanski gets the Browns job. Point being, Brian Billick never even touched on how good his offense was in Minnesota ever, I think, when he was in Baltimore, because they had such a great defense. So many Hall of Famers on that side. It's almost similar for Stefanski now with Cleveland. He still has that great defense. Did we play well Sunday? No. But the talent is still there. The ability is still there. But with Stefanski being that offensive mind, here's my point. The only quarterback that they've even drafted since he's been head coach is DTR as a 5th rounder. And I would say that he's not as a 5th rounder, you're not expecting him to be your franchise quarterback. He looked good in spurts his rookie year. I heard Jason Lloyd talk about it this week where, yes, Jameis Winston, I think if Kevin doesn't feel like it was controlled to where who's the starting quarterback, where it feels like the call is coming from elsewhere, not from the head coach, that Jameis would probably get in there. But he made the comment that DTR, we need to get a look at him before the end of the year if this year is going to kind of be written off. And I agree with that. But with Kevin Stefanski, my point is how much is he at fault? What parts are he at fault for this collapse? Is it the coaching changes?
Well,
is it him?
I gotta blame at least have it on him because he does call the plays. Again, some of it is on Watson for not making the reads, but some of it is on Stefanski too. I've never understood this about Stefanski. This is why I think he's a good head coach. I don't know if giving up the play calling will work because I didn't like Dorsey's play calling in Buffalo at all. You saw it. It was all Josh Allen hero ball. It's the reason why Buffalo went on a run after he was fired. But, James, tell me this. Why do the Browns start off every game, first drive, besides obviously the one last week against Washington? You can almost pencil it in. They're going to move the ball. They're probably going to get a field goal. They are very good on script, those 10, 15 plays. Once he gets off script and defense start adjusting and you start settling into the game, they can't move the ball.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a fair statement. Definitely fair this year. Now, last year with Flacco at the helm, I would beg to differ where he came in to an offense that I don't know how familiar he was with it, and played very well right off the bat. So my Stefanski and his offense, how much of it is left? To be honest with you, I know he's calling plays, but how much is it? How much is there is left that represents who he was and what he brought when he first came to the franchise? Now that Dorsey's there, I don't. If I'm Kevin Stefanski and we're struggling, the last thing I want to do is give up control of play calling.
I mean,
do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I disagree with you because I think you got to try something. If it's not the quarterback, even for a series, I'm not even saying for a whole game. Let Dorsey call a series and see how it goes. I mean, if they're, I talk about this all the time when it comes to play calling, coach, and all that. I compare it to like going to a restaurant, right? We can go to the same restaurant. We can go to whatever restaurant you name, Outback, Longhorn, Applebee's, McDonald's. I don't care. Every restaurant has the same menu. I could pick a burger. You could pick fish. You could pick chicken. So we could have the same play calls on a sheet. Stefanski may call something than Dorsey. Dorsey may call something different than Stefanski. It may work. It may not. I just think you have to try anything to get this offense going. For the life of me, Stefanski, this is what I noticed this year too. Where last year, and I used to make fun of this because like every first drive you could count on, there's the tight end screen, whether it was into Njoku or Harrison Bryant or another tight end. They're not even running the tight end screen this year. They're not running, to your point, any of the staples of what Stefanski used to do. The tight end screen, the slip screen, the outside zone under center, bootleg back. Not seeing any of it.
And, we can see the results of it. So I don't know with the play calling if it's going to be any better because of the inconsistent with the blocking, the offensive line, whether it's run blocking or pass blocking. There's nothing, there is no identity on the offense right now.
Loss of Callahan was something I talked about before the season that was so underrated that only Cleveland market people would know. That was massive. And I knew the offensive line was going to take a step back. I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. Now, again, part of it is injuries, but I mean, it just also feels like they have no depth. And I'm sorry, DeJuan Jones, probably a nice guy. He's a massive human being, but he's not a right tackle in the NFL. I'm sorry, he's just not. He may be a guard, but he doesn't have the quickest feet in the world to play tackle. And
Brandon, if we traded him to the Titans and he went to play for Callahan again, what would his production be like?
I think it would take some time, but I'm guessing he'd be better. But I still don't know if quickness-wise he could be a tackle in the league. I think he could be a guard. It's what Jeff Stone in Philadelphia has done with Mekhi Becton. Remember him? He was a left tackle with the Jets, really struggled. Now he's Philadelphia starting guard.
And let's do that. Let's jump ahead. I know we've talked so much Browns. Let's talk about the matchup versus the Eagles. We were just talking about Kevin Stefanski, but tell us what in the world's going on in Philadelphia with all the heat that Nick Sirianni's getting.
Okay.
I think I like him. I'm a fan.
Personally, I like Sirianni. I think he gets a lot of unfair heat. I will tell you, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I am going to grab this right here is a pencil because we had a guy last year by the name of Coach Pencil and Matt Patricia with a pencil on defense. And that was the start and the end of the Philadelphia Eagles last year. And this year, they bring in Kellen Moore, they bring in Vic Fangio, and week 1, they go into Brazil, they get a win against Green Bay. Week 2, they had Atlanta beat, and I don't blame Sirianni for the play call. Saquon Barkley's one of the best running backs in the league. I'm sorry, you catch that ball, it's an easy first down. He wins the game. They kick the field goal. Kirk Cousins drives on him. It is what it is. Obviously, they beat the Saints, and then the Tampa Bay game happened, and I told people the Eagles were going to get blown out by Tampa Bay. We don't match up well with Tampa Bay. Down in that heat, didn't have A.J. Brown, didn't have Devontae Smith, no Wayne Johnson in that game either. It was a bad matchup all the way around. They are going to get those guys back. I think the biggest difference between last year's Eagles team and this year's Eagles team is this team should be 3-1 at the very least. It's not even the interceptions. For whatever reason, Jalen Hurts is struggling with fumbles and his pocket awareness. And I don't know if that's coaching. I don't know if it's him not having confidence in the offensive line. Whatever it is, he is struggling in the pocket with blitzes. And again, this is something that I feel like an Eagles fan would only know, James. He only threw one interception the entire training camp, did not have a fumble. He did not turn the ball over until the last snap of training camp at the end of the preseason. So, again, we'll take that for what it's worth. Philly did not play their guys in the preseason either. Take that for what it's worth. There's a new scheme, new everything implemented. But this is the week. I mean, in Philly land, if you don't beat down the Browns, if this is even a close game, heads are going to roll because people in Philadelphia want to see a blowout, something they have not seen since week 4 of last season.
Well, I hope the Browns can at least bring something comparable to make it have some sort of competition on Sunday without being the embarrassment to where if they get blown out, just remember, WrestleMania was just in Philadelphia this year. Don't tell me that this football game is going to be so bad that they couldn't even make the very bottom of the match card at a WrestleMania that nobody wants to watch because of how bad the Browns play.
So listen, every Thursday on my show, I do money line picks. I pick all, 14, 16, however many games that are on the slate a week. I make all my money line picks. And then I do 5 games, what I call my best bets, where I pick the spreads of 5 games and I see how I do throughout the season. I think the line on this game is very interesting. Again, I know you guys don't have a betting sponsor, but I'm telling you right now, at 8.5, I'd be inclined to take the Browns plus 8.5.
You're kidding me.
I think it's going to be Philly does not blow people out. I do think the key to this game will be, can the Browns offensive line block Jalen Carter up front? He's been a monster for Philadelphia. He is this generation's Aaron Donald, in my opinion.
I have the answer to that. No, they won't be able to block him because they haven't been able to do it all year. And even if they can, Watson will stand there and wait for him kindly to get to the pocket.
Well, if they don't, it's going to be a long day. We'll have to see if Josh Sweat and Graham can have a big day for Philly. I will tell you that the Eagles basically, I don't know if you remember, they signed Bryce Huff in free agency to replace Hassan Reddick, and then obviously traded Hassan Reddick to the Jets. Hassan Reddick has not even registered, not Hassan Reddick. Bryce Huff has not even registered on the stat sheet for Philadelphia, and he started every game. He's been historically bad, and the Eagles and Jets tried to redo the trade, and the NFL said no because you cannot trade a player back to the same team for 2 years. A little new out there in the rule book for all you guys listening on BelieveLand Media. That actually happened about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, Browns fans have nothing to say about trades right now. We can't say anything about any bad trades because we're living in one still currently and possibly 2 seasons after this with that Watson trade. So also anybody locally that does not know about the Eagles coach, Nick Sirianni, he is a Mount Union University former player, was defensive backs coach there from 2004 to 2005. But this is a fun fact. He also played 1 year for the Canton Legends. The Canton Legends, I can admit, I actually went to one of their games at the Canton Civic Center. That was a indoor arena football team, like a minor league compared to, remember when the AFL was going strong, but this was like a minor league team. But yeah, I got a lot of respect for him. I love how they run the football. Saquon Barkley is somebody that I thought was a great get for the Eagles. I anticipated that he's going to get a ton of touchdowns this year, the way Sirianni loves to run the football.
A lot of touches. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith back. Wayne Johnson is more on the right side. So Philadelphia is getting healthy. And when you play Philadelphia, it's not 1st and 10. It's 1st and 8.
So I do want to ask you this, Brandon. I am somebody as a Cleveland fan, Browns fans, Guardians, Indians, Cavs, root for the Monsters, rooted for the Lumberjacks back in the day. I go back to really falling in love with sports in the 1980s. The San Diego Chargers became my second favorite team because 4 o'clock games after Browns games, the Chargers were on TV a lot. I thought and still believe they had the best uniforms in the NFL. That became my team: the Dan Fouts, Kellen Winslow, Wes Chandler, Charlie Joyner, Chuck Muncie, James Brooks. There was a lot of they were fun to watch. A great offensive team. Point being, as a Cleveland fan back then, I learned to kind of have a plan B, right? Because my team, my Cleveland team, at somewhere during the season was going to fall short. How did you become a Eagles fan? Are they your actual primary team?
They are my primary. Over Browns, over Guardians, over Cavs, over any team. I could be covered from head to toe in Birds gear if I really wanted to 365 days a year. Comes down to it. So football has always been my favorite sport. Fell in love with the game when I was real little. Before I went to college, I actually wanted to be a play-by-play NFL broadcaster, inspired by Al Michaels, Joe Buck, Jim Nantz, and those guys. Got to college, got in the radio business at Kent State, fell in love with radio, but still had a huge passion for football. And it was 2005, so I was 5 or 6 years old at this point. The Eagles were in the NFC Championship game, taking on Michael Vick and the Atlanta Falcons. That was the year they lost to New England, that Super Bowl 39. That was the last team that went back-to-back Super Bowls. But my dad was just watching the TV in the living room, watching the game, and I came in and I saw those midnight green uniforms, and I saw Donovan McNabb running around making plays. I saw Brian Westbrook running the football. I saw Brian Dawkins, Weapon X, destroy people out there. And I said, that's my team. And so the Browns were obviously really bad at the time. But that is sort of how I fell in love with the Eagles and never looked back since.
But Brandon, did you do the belt thing? Like when wasn't Freddie Mitchell on that team, one of their wide receivers, when he would do?
No, I don't think I did. I was too young.
Terrell Owens.
That was the year they had T.O., yeah. But I remember vividly my first moment in Eagles was just seeing Donovan McNabb. And he had made a crazy scramble, threw a pass to, I think it was, a tight end at the time or something like that. And I just loved the way he played. And so that's how I fell in love with the Eagles. Again, I still support the Browns. I call myself a Browns observer. And,
I think we all are right now.
I root for the Browns. I am often overly critical of the Browns because again, maybe it sounds like a prick move, if you will, but I tell people I've won a Super Bowl. I know what it takes. I know what good football teams now look like. And what I saw 2 years ago, the Browns were a good football team. This year, not so much.
I mean, you could say that again. It's been such a struggle this year to even. I'm to the point, Brandon, where I can't. Like I said, I was playing catch up this weekend. I don't know that I can sit every Sunday now from 1 to about 4:30 and take in a game and not do something else. Like I need to do something else productive in my day.
He texted me at like 1:30 on Sunday and said, "I think I'm watching Family Feud or something else." He was like, "I can't take this." He was like, "Go Guards. I don't want to watch a game for the rest of the year. I'll see you in April at the draft. They're done." I'm not that gloom and doom, but we're getting close.
Maybe we need to do that as Browns fans. So anybody watching right now, maybe we need to get out and all meet for a movie somewhere and tailgate before the movie and just go take that in at 1 o'clock somewhere. Hell, I don't even care what it is. Just go do something else to maybe to deflect that urge to want to watch the Browns, our favorite football team, but we know how it just absolutely drives us nuts every Sunday. And we pretty much know what we're going to expect right now, Brandon. It's not going to be good football. It's just not.
The games that ended me was the Giants game. That was the most winnable game in their schedule. It knocked me out of Survivor, by the way. Thank you very much, Cleveland Browns. But James, ask me this. There is a realistic, I'm not saying it's going to happen, obviously. I mean, they don't have a lock it in win that they're going to win this game the rest of the way. They have the hardest schedule. They could go 1-16. I'm not going to say they are. They're probably looking at like 6 or 7 wins right now. I'm just saying, if they lose a couple more games, you lose to Philly and you lose to Cincinnati, who they have historically done well against. But if they lose these next 2, look out. Everything's on the table. Stefanski, Barry, Watson. At that point, throw everything out the window.
Well, I was able to see that, Jets head coach Robert Saleh was fired today. So
that was apparently he was set to fire Nathaniel Hackett. Told the owner that. The owner told Aaron, and Saleh's gone.
Yeah, heads are rolling early. I don't see Stefanski even through these struggles unless he does something behind the scenes and says, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. As far as running Deshaun out there as your starter all the time, I don't see him getting fired in season. And I'm surprised to be saying that after a Coach of the Year award, which to me is it's deserving for what they achieved last year. And I know he's a 2-time winner, but they, what's that got him, right? He has
job security in the NFL means nothing. Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl 2 years later. He's out in Philadelphia.
Yeah, fair point.
Pissed off at the time, including me. I went on one of the biggest rants I ever went on in my life. I personally love Doug. Doug cannot do anything wrong. I hope he does get the hell out of Jacksonville because that's a mess. He don't deserve to be in that mess. Doug Peterson can have a statue in Philadelphia for all I care. Now, again, I like Nick Sirianni, but I'm telling you, James, if the Browns pull this upset off, Sirianni may not have a job on Monday.
I know. I don't know. I don't get the heat. I mean, he's got what about 65 winning percentage?
The greatest win percentage of any Eagles coach in history for the first 3 years. But I'll tell you what it is. It's Philadelphia pressure. I mean, the Phillies just lost today to the Mets. I mean, if they lose this series, I was telling my one buddy, I said, I think Philadelphia's heads might explode. They've lost in the World Series. They've lost in the Super Bowl the last couple of years. Joel Embiid can't stay healthy. The hockey team's a mess. You guys haven't been in Cleveland. Philly isn't humming right now, I'll tell you that.
I mean, that's a fair statement.